What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Sitting in the boat barn, and as you can tell, still no boat. We are gonna go through the Bassmaster Open on Logan Martin. And this one was a very different tournament for me, basically because of the reason behind it. I had no boat. I fished out of a borrowed boat from my buddy Doug Chapin. Huge shout out to him for letting me use his boat. I know I've been saying it a bunch, but I really can't say thank you enough for him letting me use his boat. I mean, for all of us professional anglers, guys who fish all the time, our boat is our office. Like, we need it everywhere we go. I mean, we take good care of it, you know, all the maintenance and everything. So it's very important to us. It's a very intricate tool to help us do our job, and for another person just to lend it to me. Say, here you go, use it for the week, go smash them. It was pretty awesome of him. But yeah, let's get into the tournament. So Logan Martin, part of the Coosa River, near Pell City, Talladega County, like a really cool bass fishing part of the country. That place has been getting a ton of pressure this year. The NPFL was there earlier this year. Numerous high school tournaments have been going out of there. Alabama Bass Trail was there. Like, it just gets throttled from a lot of tournament pressure. So doing some research on it, you know, I kind of figured, actually my figures were a little bit off because I was looking at earlier in the season heavier weights that were playing, but later on when we were there, the fish were mostly, there was still some spawning, post spawn, and then there was a shad spawn deal going on, which is kind of expected, you know, around that post spawn time of the year down south, the shad are going to be spawning there pretty shortly after. So there's two things that you can really do on that body of water. You can run up the river to the dam, or you can go down the lake and fish more of like your traditional lake fish. So you got river fish and you got lake fish. And one thing that I took into consideration going into that event, looking at what they do with the lake levels that time of year, they try to fill the lake by May 1st. That's when they want the lake to be at full pool. So what that means is coming out of Neely Henry, they're going to be pulling some water in, but they're not going to be flowing any out on the Logan Martin Dam down towards the bottom of the lake. I looked at the generation schedules, and it didn't really seem like they're going to be moving a whole lot of water, not generating a lot of current. So what that means is that makes those river fish a little bit more unpredictable. And navigation up there is something that I've never been on the body of water until this year. I went down and pre-practiced a little bit. But navigation up around the dam is a little bit sketchy. I didn't really want to take the time to do that for the potential of it not amounting to anything. Now, that being said, if they would have forecasted more rain, influxes of water, that kind of stuff, where they're going to be generating power all day, it would have been a player for me. I would have gone up there and done it for sure. So my focus was basically from the takeoff there at Lincoln Landing down. I spent a lot of practice waking up really early, getting on the water right away, as I always do, but in these tournaments where a shad spawn might play, that is key. So I went around looking for a shad spawn, found a lot of shad spawning, but not a lot of bass feeding on the shad. So I was able to find one bank where there were bass feeding on shad that were obviously doing a shad spawn. And you can pan around and there's just clouds of bait everywhere. That's another thing about Logan Martin, the amount of shad that's in that place is absolutely insane. There's shad everywhere. So any hard objects, rip-rap banks, docks with floats, anything like that, they were setting up on there and they were spawning on there. But it was hard to find the bass that were chewing on shad spawn. So, and then the rest of the time, I spent some time looking for brush piles, because this is a spotted bass fishery, predominantly a spotted bass fishery. So I spent a lot of time looking for brush piles, fish that were out chasing around bait, more of your pelagic fish, in areas where they were spawning and going to. During practice, I had some battery issues. The live scope that I was using used one single 12-volt battery, just like mine does, but it wouldn't charge all the way. So about halfway left, well, I'd say halfway, maybe a little bit more than halfway through the day, that battery would be dead, and I couldn't go around and live scope and look for brush piles and fish humps and that kind of stuff. You could traditionally, but I'm trying to be as efficient as I can. So what I did is I put the trolling motor down and went up shallow, and just went looking for a big largemouth bite, because that was going to be the key. I figured if I could get, you know, somewhere around 11 to 12 pounds of spotted bass and then go catch one big largemouth, I'd be sitting pretty good in the event. So yeah, I just put the trolling motor down and I just went looking, and I found a couple things where fish were setting up on spawning. They were setting up to spawn, but catching a lot of little bucks. So I just kind of said, okay, there's areas here that they're going to. Just need to figure out how to get a bigger bite, and I didn't spend a lot of time in those areas in practice because never being on this lake that time of year, I never feel like I find enough, so I never really fish an area super thorough, because if it has the potential to have fish, I'm gonna check in and turn. Anyway, that's pretty much how practice went. Had a pretty good game plan of going and catching spotted bass in the morning through the midday, and then the last couple hours of the day going up shallow, just looking for a bigger bite to be able to bump my weights up a little bit. My target weights was like 12 to 14 pounds from what I found in practice. And that's kind of what I figured I could do. I had some brush piles found that had fish. I had rock piles, humps. I had a bunch of good stuff that had fish on it. And some really isolated stuff that I didn't think people were fishing all that much. So day one of the tournament rolls around. I checked my shad spawn deal. I fished there for a little bit, just throwing a top water around, didn't really get anything going. And then I started running rock piles. I caught one fish on that, and I lost one, and then just started running around. And for some reason, on day one, I could not keep a fish button. I didn't know what the deal was. I was throwing swim bait, I was throwing a shaky head, and then a jerk bait. You know, a jerk bait is one of those things like treble hooks. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. You try to do everything you can to optimize your setups to be able to land those fish. But sometimes it just doesn't happen. That's just throwing a jerk bait around. But gosh, the amount of bites that I had, it was pretty sickening. And some of the fish that I saw on the screen using my Garmin Live Scope, I mean, they were quality ones that I needed to get in the boat. And I had my buddy Aaron in the boat with me, so he got to witness the whole meltdown basically from like 8 o'clock in the morning until around noon. It's just pure frustration, just not being able to execute on the opportunities that I'm having put in front of me. So I said, we got to try something else. I had a gut feeling, like go up shallow. I found a flat with a bunch of stumps on it that I was able to get a couple bites on. Threw my wacky worm up next to those, and I was able to catch a couple largemouth. One decent spotted bass, was able to cull up to what I had. And that was basically it for day one. I mean, it was a last minute thing, and I was able to put those fish in the boat. Day two, I kind of I skipped the shad spawn deal. I checked it real quick. I sat down, panned the trolling motor over just to kind of look. I didn't see any bait. I mean, there was a couple little flickers of bait here and there, but not the amount of bait that were there during the shad spawn that I had located. So I was like, you know what, forget this. Let's just go straight to where I was. And the sheer number of fish in the area that I kept getting those bites and not getting to commit was kind of disgusting. The bottom was crawling with them. Now, it is the Coosa River. There is a bunch of trash fish out there, but the way these spots were setting up, the majority of the fish that I was making casts at were spotted bass, because they would come up, they would look at it, they'd follow it, and they'd go right back down. So it's one of those things that I kind of tried to make a couple adjustments. I slowed down a little bit, and then I made a key adjustment, lightened up my shaky head, and then changed the worm on my shaky head, and I started getting a lot more bites. Ran to a brush pile, and it was loaded. It was loaded. I mean, there was fish everywhere. I threw a jerkbait over, the brush pile was right here, the wind's kind of blowing me. I'm panning, so I'm going way out and around, and I just make a cast over where I know the top of the pile is, and I'm just kind of twitching it down as I'm going across, and it just locks. I'm like, oh my gosh. It comes up, it's like a 2.5 pound spot. I'm like, okay, perfect. I get set up, make that cast a couple more times with the jerkbait, nothing. Pick up that shaky head, sling that over there, and I just let it fall down, and I twitch it a little bit, and I think I caught 4 or 5 fish off the same pile, and they were all 3 quality fish, nothing big, but they were all over 2 pounds, which is what I needed. They were like, I think a 226, a 2.6, and then a 2.8. So almost 3 pounder. So I was looking pretty good. I was like, okay, we can run the rest of this stuff and maybe put together 12.5, 13 pounds. And that's what I started doing. And then it hit me. We got into this backwater area that I fished the day before, trying to catch a couple spawning fish, and one of my coaling fish was dead. I'm like, what the heck? Then I look, my mine's dead. Then you go back a half hour later, another one. Now these fish are just like, I couldn't figure out what the deal was. The only thing that I can say is it must have gotten too hot too quick. I had the aerators recirculating continuously, fresh water being pumped in when I was on the main lake, not when I was back up in these shallow areas to keep the water temps down, because it was in the mid 80s every day. So I was really trying to pay attention to what was going on with the fish, and they didn't show signs of stress at all. You know, I'm checking them, and all of a sudden they just start floating belly up. I for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. I felt awful, and that was one of the things that probably spun me out the most on day 2 is when you're killing your catch, you're looking at dollar bills floating in your live well. And it just, there's no way to come back from it. The only thing that I was thankful for, and I say that very lightly, that they were my bigger fish that I wouldn't be culling anyway. My 2 smaller fish that were still, I had 3 dead ones. My 2 smaller fish were still very much alive, and I made a late day move to another spot, which was all rock, and I ended up culling up again. So I had 11-10 on day 2, but that got reduced to 10-14 or 10-13. I can't remember. I had 20 pounds total for the 2 days. And I caught them on a lot of stuff that I found in practice. And 2 of the spots that played the biggest were the ones that I didn't have live scope for. So that just kind of tells me that sometimes you just got to turn it off and just go trust your instincts a little bit and just get up there. And you know, there's fish that still live shallow and you can make it happen. So that's what we did. One of the key players this week was a jerkbait by far. You know, anytime you're fishing on brush and spotted bass, jerkbait's gonna play. Had this on this, it's a 6'9" jerkbait rod. It's the ALX Zolo jerkbait is what it's called. Mega Bass Vision 110. Don't even know what this color is, but chartreuse belly, blue back. 10-pound Seaguar and Vizex. I was throwing this thing around brush piles and just over these humps trying to get fish to react and kind of show me that, you know, they're there. I mean, a lot of times these brush piles, there were so many different kinds of fish in them. It's crappie, catfish, any kind of rough fish, suckers, and all sorts of other crap that was in them. I would use this just to show me that they're there. If I wouldn't get a strike, you know, they'd come out of the pile looking at it. Very key instrumental player for me this week was definitely a jerkbait. Another one that was a key player was the old tried and true wacky worm. Just a Yamamoto Senko. 15-pound braid to a 10-pound Seaguar and Vizex leader. And this is just a medium heavy 7'2" spinning rod, size 30 spinning reel. And you know, anytime you're up shallow, anywhere in the country I'm going, this thing's gonna be on the front deck. I throw this next to boulders, I threw this next to stumps, trees, skipped it under docks. I mean, it got a lot of bites. And I tried it on a couple different rods, but just threw it on this one just to basically have it on the front deck, because you cannot fish a tournament anywhere in the country without having a wacky worm on the front deck, especially when they're shallow. But probably the biggest player for me was a shaky head. And that's no surprise when you're fishing for spotted bass, a shaky head is gonna play. And this is a owner alien head, shaky head, jig head, with a Missile Baits Green Pumpkin 48. And the adjustment that I made, I was basically just using a Yamamoto Senko. I tended to get a lot more bites on just a plain stick worm instead of an actual shaky head worm. I think it was just something a little bit different. So I was just trying that, experimenting with it, and then the bites just completely diminished altogether. So I put on something a little bit smaller, and this Missile Baits 48 is amazing. It's a very subtle action, not a whole lot. I mean, you can still quiver it enough. With this rod setup, which was the ALX Enox Wizard. This is a 7'2" medium fast on a Daiwa Tatula MQLT 15-pound Seaguar Smackdown braid to a 10-pound Seaguar and Vizex leader. But this rod has just enough tip where I could bounce this little shaky head along really, really slow and entice those fish into biting. And I caught them everywhere from like 15 foot deep on this thing all the way up to about 2-3 feet. It was a huge player for me, helped me put a lot of fish in the boat. I caught a lot more fish on day 2 than I did on day 1 after making the adjustments to a smaller bait, just changing it up. This Missile Bait 48 is often overlooked. You guys gotta check these things out. It's great for wacky worm rigging too. It's got even has it wrote on the worm. It says rig here. So you can find the dead center of this bait so it falls perfectly. The 2 sides are a little bit wider so it flutters a little bit more. Just an awesome bait, it's often overlooked. You know, Missile Baits has a huge selection of soft plastics, and everybody always talks about the D-Bomb, the Destroyer, the Spunk Shad, the Chunky D, like all that. But you gotta check out all their options, and this 48 is often overlooked, but it is a player. And I always have them in the boat just for situations like this, because they've seen everything else, but they haven't seen this. So, just something to keep in mind. But guys, I mean, as I said before, I'm recently with ALX rods, and I'm absolutely loving all these setups. I was throwing a wacky worm on this setup in practice, and it was fantastic. It's got just enough tip to be able to make really accurate casts and fling that worm all the way up under some cover. But I just really wanted it for a shaky head. I mean, this rod is second to none when it comes to throwing a shaky head. I absolutely love it. And I'm going to be putting it to work on some smallmouth here, hopefully pretty soon too, so we'll see how I can handle that. I'm sure it'll do great. I mean, I just can't wait to use it. But guys, that's pretty much a wrap for Logan Martin. It's been a challenge. It's been not the season that I've wanted by any means. But, you know, we got 5 events left. And we got 1 in Eufaula, and then the rest of them are coming up north. So I'm very much looking forward to that. If you want to check out the ALX rods, the Missile Baits, Seaguar lineup and everything, they're all available at the Reel Shot, so head on over to their website, check them all out. If you want to check out any of the gear that I'm wearing, I'm always rocking Grundon's gear. It's the premier gear, guys. I love this stuff. And yeah, so I'll link all of the companies that support me down below. Just thank you guys so much for watching. This is hopefully not really a really quick breakdown, but this is the breakdown of Logan Martin. We got a lot of work to do going into the rest of the season. I just really need to have a stellar finish in Eufaula, and then I feel comfortable in Eufaula. I've been there before, but definitely going into the rest of the season, we're going up north for 3 events, and then back down south to Hartwell for the last one. So we'll see where we shake out. We're gonna keep grinding. I've never been a person to give up or get down on myself just because things haven't gone the way that you'd like them to. Because it's bass fishing. You never know. But guys, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. See ya.